Could there be an adjustment to the lockdown level?
A very good evening to you, Griselda, and the viewers. Of course, you would know that these decisions are made based on certain aspects of facts. When the country was put on level 4, it was because the infections, Griselda, were quite high, and then they were rising, so something had to be done to arrest them. So if you look at what has been happening over the past few days, you do see that there is a decline, and of course it's not significant because the number of deaths is still very, very, very high. But overall, you do see an indication of a decline, and of course the minister and the experts 2 days ago did indicate that perhaps there may be some hope that we are turning the corner. In fact, the acting minister basically said, Griselda, we have passed the peak, so which is the peak of the third wave. So given that that's where we are now, even today's numbers, I just saw that we are just under 10,000, but deaths are still higher at about 287. So overall, bringing the total to 70 or just shy of 70,000. So looking at all those factors, Griselda, so you do realize that and the pressure the country is facing from the economic point of view, perhaps we are likely to have, let's say, a lower level of adjustment, perhaps moving from adjusted level 4 to level 3. But of course, that will be decided, or that will be communicated by the president in the next 25 minutes or so.
Yeah, we've been monitoring, Mzwai, some concerns raised by, amongst others, the restaurant industry that are saying they're really limping as a result of the tight restrictions. A possible reprieve for the alcohol industry, not just that, because the restaurant industry is saying that, that forms a crucial part of what they do. People would want to go and have meals and have their beverages with that. Could that possibly be on the cards, a reprieve for the alcohol industry?
Well, it is a likelihood, Griselda, but I think they will do, if they do that, they will have to balance it with what is happening on the ground. One of the reasons, perhaps the main reason, the issue of alcohol always crops up because it is the issue of hospitalization. So right now, how far are we with hospitalization? If the indication is that the hospitals are not going to be overwhelmed, so then there is a case there to perhaps ease a little bit on the issue of alcohol, because we don't want trauma cases to crowd hospital and people don't have beds. I just said earlier, as we were speaking, Griselda, that the numbers are pointing towards a decline. So which means the pressure will be somehow lifted. And also the issue of the economy, which the president is very concerned about. We may see perhaps a little bit relaxing on alcohol or in some other key sectors as well. But I think we'll have to be very, very cautious. He has been having meetings throughout the day, getting expert analysis and where the trajectory is going. So you would know that we may be in a situation, Griselda, where we are not reporting the true reflection. The 2 weeks of mayhem in KZN and Gauteng may have perhaps confused the reporting as we know it, perhaps giving us a glimmer of hope when none exists. But I think with the expert analysis and presentation that he has received, so he would be able to come to a determination really that would be accepted by many in the industries that want a little bit of relaxing so that they can push economic activity.
Sure, that is something to watch, Mzwai. Speaking to the CSIR's Dr. Ridwan Suleiman a bit earlier on this evening, shortly after 7 o'clock, he did say they're looking very interestingly to what will happen over the next few days pertaining to those numbers in light of what we saw take place in the country over the past 2 weeks, where you had massive groups of people converging in one place, perhaps that will have a bearing on the number of COVID-19 infections in the next couple of days. That brings me to vaccination. We're expecting an update on that. The last report we got from the acting health minister was 6 million people vaccinated thus far. We're expecting an update from the president regarding that, especially because there are also other age groups that are expected to open up for registration for the vaccination process very soon.
Of course, especially if you look at the group that has just started vaccinating. In fact, they had been allowed to register on the 15th of July, but they soon allowed the vaccination of that group, the 35 to 49. I think that group has really given a further impetus in the whole drive, because they have been breaking records. And I think that is cause for hope for government to say, well, if people are willing to do this, so we have to do better. I think I don't know whether it will be the president who may announce it, but I think very soon we'll get an announcement which will say the other groups are now to follow, because the country needs immunity. We have just had a situation where the local government elections are likely to be postponed. You know, the Moseneke inquiry basically recommended that they be postponed because the country needs to get that immunity. So the IEC is looking into that, obviously following all the proper processes to ensure that that does happen. And whilst that space is being given, then government is really given the opportunity to ramp up the vaccination situation. So I would assume that in the next few days, if not tonight, that announcement will be made, and then the country will then head towards that herd immunity that everyone is looking for, because clearly the non-pharmaceutical interventions, yes, they are helping, but it does seem that many people are not adhering to those. So we've got to get vaccinated, and then we probably can turn the corner. So we'll wait and see, Griselda.
Zwai, just yesterday, the Basic Education Minister Anzi Motshekga had also spoken about the reopening of schools tomorrow, but she did say that the president has the final say. Are we expecting perhaps word from him on that? Because just this evening we've spoken to quite a number of individuals from the sector concerned about how this is going to be done, the safety of teachers, even though the safety of the learners as well, in particular in areas where the non-pharmaceutical interventions that you speak of are very difficult to adhere to, in particular in overcrowded classrooms. Expect the president to touch on that as well?
Oh yes, especially because schools are opening tomorrow. And the president really would need to give direction. I think the concern would be, yes, we all agree that we see the numbers going down, but they are still very, very, very high. So that concern is really founded, because even if we do need to get back to the normal situation, yes, we know that the teachers have been vaccinated, but not all of them. So there's still a lot of work to be done. But again, the impact this whole lockdown is having on children. So you really have to balance a lot of things here, Griselda. You need to look at the welfare of children. You need to look at the economy as a whole. But of course, you need to look at the health and the life of people, because at the end of the day, you don't want to lose either. So you must find a way which will balance all of this. So I expect the president to do indeed indicate if schools will go ahead. But my inclination is that perhaps they would be allowed to go ahead and adhere to strict protocols, so that you don't allow again the transmission to spread and then they be out of hand.
Especially in light of some of the vaccine hesitancy as well, that I know here in Gauteng, for example, the MEC of Education, Panyaza Lesufi, had quite recently spoken about some of the hesitancy amongst those teachers to vaccinate. It was quite a sizable number, if my memory serves me well. But also on another issue, while the violence and the looting has fizzled out. The cleanup operations have also been taking place over the past week, following, of course, the violence and the unrest that had gripped the country. Any likelihood that he might touch on that, in particular because there had been a lot of conflicting statements after the president had spoken about an attempted insurrection from members of his own cabinet in the messaging of government about what they believe exactly, or how you term exactly what had taken place in the country?
I see the president using this opportunity really to set the record straight in terms of messaging. And you'd realize that as soon as those mixed messages kept coming, government then decided that they will centralize communication around that area. That is why you've been seeing the acting minister of communications, or rather the acting minister in the presidency, who is responsible for communications, be the one who's been communicating those messages. And I think that was the plan, to try and avoid the mixed messaging that we've been seeing. So given that the head of state, the commander-in-chief, will have that opportunity tonight, I think he will set the record straight. He will indicate exactly where we are, what are we doing, how the recovery is happening, because if he is then seen as someone who is really in charge and in command of what is happening, perhaps that will give a bit of hope insofar as progress is concerned. But I don't see him not touching on it. In fact, I don't think many South Africans would expect the president not to touch on this area, because it's been an issue really that has derailed a lot of things. One of the announcements he had been making was that the country is on course towards recovery, and then boom, in 2 weeks you see all those gains. I mean, think of the factories that were burnt down in KZN. Think of the number of people who are likely to lose jobs. In fact, I think the mayor of Durban, of eThekwini, if I'm correct, he had estimated something around 150,000, and that is not the whole picture. So that issue of economic recovery is quite important, but for it to happen, South Africans would need to know what is the president doing about the destruction that has happened, that has actually destroyed the very structures that are meant to prop up the economy.
I want to stay, Mzwai, on the messaging around that. While the president, of course, will speak in his capacity as the president of the country, what we're also seeing now, reports, from the ANC Women's League, Batabile Dlamini, basically saying that the defense minister was bullied over her views on the insurrection. I mean, talk to us a bit about that, and at this critical moment, how important is it for the messaging of government to be consistent, for it to be seen to be that all members of the executive or of cabinet are speaking with one voice? In particular, if you look at what's been happening within the security cluster, for example, there's been a lot of blame game. Yeah. This is not the first instance. We saw the State Security Minister, Ayanda Jojo, on Vuyomvoko's show, The Watchdog. She had basically said that intelligence was given to the police minister. The police minister, when there had been an engagement with Parliament, basically saying he never received anything. So the messaging of government has sort of been all over the place. Now, enter the ANC Women's League. The defense minister, according to Batabile Dlamini, was bullied over her views on insurrection, according to some reports. Talk to us a bit about that, and how important is there for there to be that consistency, in particular at a time like this, for government not to look like it doesn't know what it's doing?
Well, yes, that is quite important, particularly around this time. In fact, you'd remember we had done some work around who is accountable, who is taking accountability of what is happening. And I think one of the reasons really behind some of that story that we've been doing is because we've been seeing people saying different things on the same subject, and then people who are supposed to be sitting in one meeting, the cabinet ministers, if they say two things, yet they are supposed to be sitting in one meeting, and then you really wonder what exactly is happening. Of course, Batabile Dlamini may not necessarily be in government, but she is a vital member of the ANC. She is the president of the Women's League. So the ANC is the governing party. So if the governing party is actually not able to speak with one voice, but I would say, Griselda, this unfortunately is the result of a divided ANC. I know that we are talking about government right now, but the fact of the matter is that government is constituted by the ANC, which is the governing party. So it takes its cue and mandate from the ANC. So if the ANC, which as we know today, and the difficulties that we are going through, the mayhem that we've been speaking about, those are all the results of the political infighting within the ANC. So clearly, there is a thought, or the thought process is not necessarily the same. So somehow that will translate into even government activities. So it's really, you can see that the president has his work cut out for him. In fact, after this, he would need to perhaps sit down, reflect, and take stock, and perhaps change a few things, because you can't have a situation where your own ministers are talking past each other. That example you made of Minister Lodlo and Minister Cele is a case in point. It's very I think it's very, very obvious that all is not well. And for the president of the Women's League, Griselda, to come out and say, well, the minister was bullied. So what is it that you know that we do not know? We are not inside the party. We are not members of the party. We are simply citizens of the country. We are relying on you as governing party to tell us the message. But if you yourselves are telling us that which you are telling us, clearly you're causing confusion even further. That's why I'm saying the president has his work cut out for him to try and deal with the situation.
Mzwai, before we let you go, I'm going to put you on the spot just a bit. I mean, a likelihood of a cabinet reshuffle. I know you'd just be speculating if you responded to that. But I mean, in light of what has been happening, within, members of a cabinet, just the examples we just spoke about now, not speaking, I guess, with one voice, with what the president is saying. Accusations that, I mean, things could have been handled better. I think everyone would agree that the manner in which, the past few weeks have unfolded in South Africa, why was it that no one was able to pick up, what was scheduled to take place? I mean, the State Security Minister saying that they knew, they forwarded that information. The Minister Begicele says, no, we did not receive any intelligence pertaining to that. It seems like a cabinet in disarray. I don't think I'd get into trouble for saying that, but a cabinet reshuffle? Yeah. Any talk of that?
Well, yeah. You know what's interesting about the cabinet reshuffle, Griselda, and time and again when we do have an opportunity to perhaps pose those questions to the president, we certainly do. But I think it's one of those privileges that he's been accorded by the Constitution, where he will basically tell you that I'm the only person who knows when that will happen. Of course, those questions have been coming up now and again. And if you look at his, I think it's more than 2 years in office, and clearly halfway his term, and then given that he himself, Griselda, did say that, we could have done things better, and given that we are here talking about the mixed messaging, so clearly you would need to correct certain things. And also, I have just said the acting minister in the presidency, the fact that there's an acting minister, it means that position needs to be filled. So the late Minister Mthembu, so that position still needs to be filled. As I'm speaking to you and standing here, Griselda, we're talking about the pandemic. The Minister of Health is on leave, is on special leave, as it were. So clearly, certain things need to be done, and it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, not even next week, not even next month, but at some point, the cabinet reshuffle will have to happen, because the vacancies must be filled, certain few portfolios must be rearranged. And of course, if that is what you want to do in terms of streamlining the message.
Key positions, those that need to be filled. Mzwai, again, before I let you go, something just came to my mind now. The SIU report that had been given to the president on the Minister of Health. When are we expecting any word on that? That's been handed over to him, but there's complete silence.
Well, again, Griselda, once it gets handed over to the president, he and he alone decides when and if he will release it. Even that, we're waiting on him. But we do expect him to act on that report. How he will act, only time will tell.
That's why we have to let you go now. Thank you very much indeed for your time, SABC political editor.